he's looking at your rap sheet.
Yep. Looking very suspicious as I look through this. Mm-hmm. First thing that pops out is way too much school.
Tell me about it.
That's gotta hurt.
Brutal.
That's gotta hurt in a lot of different ways. Good to go. We're rolling.
Yeah.
Hey now. All right. Well, I guess we're live.
Great.
Anyway, whenever I have a guest on the show like this, like a material expert, it can be really difficult to try to unwrap and unfold everything. Actually, really impossible, basically, to unwrap everything all in one podcast. But we'll try to make the most sense of it as we go through here. One of the things that really interested me, well, I guess let me back up a little bit. First of all, I got to say that we were introduced by our good friend Charles Poliquin, R.I.P. Really tragic that he passed, and I know that you were really close to him, so very sorry for your loss. I've known him for a long time as well, but like we weren't colleagues. I didn't hang out with him a lot, but we were friends. And the fitness community has lost a really great person that had a lot of great information. Anyway, you were one of the first names that popped up when I talked to him probably almost a year and a half ago and said, hey, who should I have on my podcast? And he said, this girl would be great. She's awesome. And then I started watching some of your stuff. And one of the things that popped out to me is you talked about muscle being like this active tissue and the muscle being like an organism that helps your body really burn sugar and burn calories. And I just don't think it's talked about enough. People mention it, but then they go bop, 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 and they skip past. And it's just not, I think that's a big deal.
Yeah.
I think it's a huge deal. Why don't you tell us a little bit about kind of what you found in your practice with, kind of helping people gain muscle? What has been some of the advantages?
So it's really interesting when you think about muscle, and I practice something called Muscle-Centric Medicine. And it's the concept that muscle is the largest organ in the body. So you talk about the heart, talk about the thyroid, but really muscle, just by mass, is the largest organ. And it's an endocrine organ. And not only is it an endocrine organ, it is the largest. So when you train your muscle, right, it secretes certain anti-inflammatory compounds.
Right.
In addition, it is the largest site for glucose disposal. And we all know high levels of glucose can cause diabetes, cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer's disease, right? So it's type 3 diabetes of the brain. But the muscle is really responsible for fatty acid oxidation, glucose metabolism, and your resting metabolic rate. So the focus needs to really be on the quality of the tissue versus everyone focuses on adiposity. So they focus on being over fat. Really, being over fat's not the issue. It's really,
I like that term, over fat.
it's really about being under muscled.
Mm.
So, your listeners in your community are really fit. The rest of the population, and really significantly as individuals age, the quality of that tissue goes down. If you don't train it appropriately and feed it the appropriate nutrients, in particular protein, then you get kind of what looks like a marbled steak. So you get fat in the muscle tissue, and that decreases its ability to generate power, to help them with the metabolism. So it's really essential. So what I've found that if I can keep the muscle tissue healthy, the longevity of my patients, I did my fellowship in geriatrics, in obesity medicine and geriatrics at WashU. And I ran a geriatric clinic for 2 years. Nobody in this room is geriatric, by the way. And
what is that age?
Over the age of 65.
Okay.
So what we did is, you follow people that have been going to that clinic for years, right? So if they had cognitive issues, maybe they started going in their 50s. But really, if you look at them from 65 and on, a lot of what they had was preventable. And it really started to solidify this concept of muscle-centric medicine, of how do we allow people to age well, and how do we, while they are young, really augment that.
Do you get frustrated with what is going on traditionally?
Oh, yeah. Right now, our healthcare system is one of putting out fires. Unless it is a major trauma event, then that's necessary. But really, the whole paradigm of medicine is backwards. We look at it in pieces and not necessarily as a whole holistic system.
Somebody has the one that we hear the most of, and it's, there's more and more evidence coming out now that it maybe the problem is being looked at the wrong way, but the one you hear about the most is like the statin drugs.
Yeah.
Or that's the one I hear about the most anyway. Somebody goes to the doctor, their cholesterol is high, and the doctor's like, here's this. And I'm not in the medical community, so I don't know who to point the finger at. I don't have solutions either, so I'm
Right.
not one to bitch and complain about stuff that I don't have a solution to. However, it can be really frustrating because it seems like a lot of evidence is coming out that statin drugs in some situations can actually be worse for some people. They can
Yeah.
hurt, kind of potentially harm people. And there could be a lot better strategies going on. What do you think is like the whole, why are some of these things happening in your view?
So I think that when you're talking about statins in particular, there's a time and a place for them, right? So if the LDL is over 190,
So they
and
can be effective.
absolutely,
Okay.
right? And the evidence is clear that, I'm not a cardiologist, but the evidence is clear from the Lipid Association and these governing bodies in particular that it would be of a medical disservice to not, it would be almost medical malpractice to not, these people are at very high risks. But when you're looking at other levels of elevated lipids and cholesterol, to just put people on a statin, we know that there's dietary interventions, exercise interventions, and lifestyle interventions that would have a much better effect, right? Because statins affect brain, they affect memory, it
Right.
affects muscle tissue. I think the disconnect is in our societies, we're very immediate solution oriented. So lifestyle changes don't happen overnight.
Right.
How long did you diet for this bodybuilding show?
Yeah, many weeks.
Right? So
Yeah. And it took, years to even get in good enough shape to even consider getting
right.
on stage, right?
Right. And so that was something that you had a journey. In medicine, it's not really thought of as a journey. We never think about the end point. So you place someone on a statin, then what is the trajectory of their aging? So you do it now, then where do you just add more drugs? Where does it stop? So if you kind of take a step back and take a much broader view and you fix it from the root cause in, say, integrative medicine, you take the best of Western science with the best of more alternative lifestyle approaches and you combine it, then you have the potential for some solutions that are not necessarily immediate, but important,
Right.
and critical.
I'm sure you've had clients over the years that are not adhering to some of the advice, but what if you have somebody that adheres to at least, a little bit of exercising, and maybe they're not doing so great on the diet? What are some results you kind of seen with that? Because I think a lot of people are in that category where they just can't quite get the food down. The cravings are too much. There's too many good, rich foods around that
Right.
people love to indulge on, right?
Right. So in my practice, I will be frank, the majority of the people, 98% of the people that show up in my practice are ready to show up and do the work. They don't even get through the door. I don't even, as a patient-physician relationship, I don't take them as patients. If you're not willing to execute, at least meet me 90%,
Right.
which is asking a lot, but I'm asking them to level up.
Right.
So it is their personal responsibility. Then it's not really a good match because if they can't get that fundamental down, if they
can't
cannot
figure out how to fix it.
I cannot help you if you cannot stop eating Twinkies.
Right.
I mean, I can't.
Right.
I can help augment.
You hear that, Andrew?
Twinkies is okay. It's those damn fries.
I know.
Oh, French fries.
Yeah.
I mean, you can treat other things like, environmental toxins or heavy metals or mold, if there's these tests that are positive or GI issues. But when it comes to really executing on body composition and decreasing risks that will affect longevity, then nutrition is key. So the diet and exercise component have to go hand in hand. With that being said, I will work on their mind, right? So there are, ways in which to decrease feeding,
Right.
right? So it's a top-down approach. It's how do you get their internal wherewithal high enough to then begin to execute, and of course, changing their environment.
Yeah, the strategy is going to be a huge part of it. My brother and I were working on a film. So far, it's very broad category of being on nutrition.
Okay.
But we're trying to, help solve some of this mystery, or not even mystery, I guess, but it sort of seems like a mystery because when you ask one expert to the next, there's a lot of dispute. One person will say, hey, you need more vegetables. The next guy will say, hey, vegetables aren't even healthy. They're not even digestible.
Right.
The next person will say, hey, what are you doing eating all that meat? It's a
Right.
carcinogenic. What's going on? Some people will say the carbs will cause all these problems,
Right.
And it confuses a lot of people, right? And so some people just, even though they know the answer lies in the middle, which is almost always the case. They just kind of put their hands up and say, "I don't
Yeah.
know what's going on." So, America continues to get heavier, to get fatter, to get
Yeah.
to be more and more um, unhealthy, I guess you'd say. What do you think is kind of the number one thing that we're facing, trying to get over some of that? Do you think is it really just the food? I know that you want people to, have the food down and exercise and everything in combination. But if you had to kind of pick one over the other, do you think the food is probably the main
Yeah.
culprit, or?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, of course, there's changes in hormonal status because of the high stress lifestyle.
Right.
Nutrient deficiencies, of course, thyroid problems, environmental toxins definitely affect the body in those ways in terms of optimizing weight. But when it comes to obesity and when it comes to the obesity epidemic, we have to start with the obvious. And the obvious is overconsumption of food, overconsumption of processed foods. And that is really essential. And when you look at different experts, we all have our different thing, right? Protein is my thing. I'm a low carbohydrate person. I think animal-based proteins are exceptional. You ask another guy, and like you said, you should just be eating vegetables or you should be on a vegetarian vegan diet. There's something to be said for bioindividuality. And I think that once you find what works for that person, it is truly exceptional, right? So some people I've seen do incredibly well on a ketogenic diet. So even if you do control for calories, some people do better on a higher carbohydrate and some people do better on a lower carbohydrate, and really kind of defining what that is.
Right.
And when a person finds that, then it tends to result in much more advanced health
Right.
and wellness for that person.
Right. And then have you seen this in your practice? Like if you're going to have the carbohydrates, then that maybe something else has to give somewhere else. Like, so if you have carbohydrates, maybe you got to eat less fat. And if you
Yeah.
don't have the carbohydrates, maybe you have to eat more fat.
At the end of the day, calories count,
Right.
no matter what people say.
Right.
So the calories are metabolized differently, yes, if it comes from protein, which has a high thermo effect, versus if it comes from fat or if it comes from carbohydrates. With that being said, if you control for calories, people will do better on different macronutrient breakdown.
Right.
My patients, I tend to start them on what people would consider a higher protein diet. I would consider an optimal protein diet. And,
Right.
that's kind of where I start them because in my practice, I always measure skeletal muscle mass. I always measure body fat. I'm always tracking blood glucose levels and a whole bunch of other tests.
Right. Does the individuality seem to come in the carbohydrates more so than anywhere else? Like, put most people on, most people are on the standard American diet where they're eating half of their body weight in grams of protein a day. You bump up their protein.
Yeah.
You probably kind of almost see instant results.
Mhm.
And then the carb is
Right.
probably where you see the
Yes.
individuality, right?
I
pop
would
in.
say you adjust their carb, you get their protein stable, you adjust their carbohydrates, and definitely their body composition improves.
Right.
So
Yeah, and so another thing that the protein, or I'll have you explain it rather. What are some things that the protein is really doing for somebody? Like, what are the top 2 or 3 things that it's doing for somebody to help them?
well, number one, it allows you to maintain your muscle mass, right? So we know that you need a certain amount of protein distributed throughout the day to help maintain that muscle mass, right? And especially as you age. So there's something called anabolic resistance that happens once puberty ends and as, say, 40s.
Right.
You need to have a certain bolus amount, which is where that 2.5 grams of leucine, which is one of the branched chain amino acids, come from. Have that distributed throughout the day in a certain amount is really essential. And protein is the foundation for everything. So really, it is the black sheep of the macronutrient family because
Right.
it has a face that's incredibly emotional for people,
Right, that's true.
right? So
Yeah.
I think it's really skewed the science because when you mix emotion with facts, it becomes very challenging.
It's an interesting thing because it's the one that gets talked about the least.
Right.
Everyone's shouting about carbs,
Right.
and, high fat, and everyone's kind of shouting about these different things, and they're not really talking that much about the protein.
Right.
But correct me if I'm wrong. The protein, it's 4 calories per gram,
Mhm.
but it doesn't even get assimilated that way. Correct?
Well, it gets assimilated that way. When you think about protein, you think about it, it is more challenging for the body to digest and absorb,
Right.
right? Because you have to get rid of the nitrogen group. And with higher protein, it increases fatty acid oxidation. There's many things that protein does. Helps feed immune cells, has glutamine, right? You generate arginine for blood pressure.
Right.
So when you kind of get your foundation, as with anything, foundation in life, right? I think about things kind of in a dualistic way. So you think about life foundation, and then you think about the lifestyle foundation. So when the foundation is in place, and that foundation for almost everybody should be protein.
Right.
I mean, I can't even imagine someone that it's not, unless they have an illness.
Can we have too much protein though? Because like we've been told for so long that you can only digest so much per serving and whatnot.
30 grams.
So you can only you digest all the protein that you intake. Whether there's benefit from going from 30 to 70, no, but you digest all of it.
Right.
And they've done studies up to 3 grams per kilogram per body weight, per pound body weight, and they haven't seen any negative effects.
Yeah. I have meals sometimes where I probably have 100 grams of protein in a meal.
And you're still here.
I'm still here. I'm totally fine.
The body can handle it, unless you have kidney disease or you have some kind of issue where you can't handle that amount of protein. There should be no reason.
What happens is I'm like, I just think I got to keep adding protein to everything. And then by the time I sit down and actually look at what I'm eating, because I'm eating with my eyes rather than like really paying attention to what's going on, I'm like, oh my God, it's probably like 80, 90, 100 grams of protein sitting here in front of me right now.
Sounds awesome though.
It is great.
Sounds delicious. How much protein are you eating now?
You know, I'm very guilty of not counting anything. I don't count anything. How about you? Do you count stuff?
I have an idea. I'm probably at 200 grams.
Yeah, for the bodybuilding stuff, he wanted me at like 350 a day, and I think I just ended up there because I ate 6 times a day and, got, I don't know, 60 grams of protein per meal or whatever that math ends up being, but it was somewhere in that neighborhood. I've messed around with all different kinds of stuff, though, over the years. Some of the recommendations from Charles and some recommendations I've gotten from different bodybuilders and stuff. I've done, double my body weight in grams of protein. I've done 500 grams of protein a day. I've done all kinds of different things. And I like to eat, but I don't have a crazy appetite. And that'll like come and go depending on what I'm doing. The more accurate I am with my food, usually my appetite will go up a little bit. Probably just because everything I'm eating is healthier, so my body's probably regulating everything a little bit better. But normally I just probably eat. I probably eat about 300 grams of protein a day, and I weigh about 250 or so, 240.
Okay,
somewhere in that neighborhood.
So,
am I doing okay?
Yeah, I mean, so again, I come from the perspective that if you're going to have calories, the majority of those calories should come from protein. Whether there's a difference between 1.8 grams per kilogram versus 2.4 grams per kilogram to gain, per pound body weight or per kilogram body weight to generate muscle.
Right.
I don't know if there's a difference. I mean, you could probably get away with 1.8 just as well as 2.4, but
it's probably good to try different things at different times a year and depending on your training and everything else, right?
It's true.
What about somebody comes to your practice and, for lack of a better term, they're just a mess. Blood work is bad. They're heavy.
Yeah.
They can't get up a flight of stairs very well. Like everything's just all screwed up. Where do you start them? Like how do we get these people head in the right direction?
Yeah. So you have to prioritize. Prioritize what is the most urgent thing. So obviously, if they've got cardiac issues, they see a cardiologist. So you get this baseline foundation of a team approach of what they need. And then the first thing that you start with, I bet you can guess, diet.
Diet.
Yeah.
Boom.
So you gotta bring that in. And typically if they're that heavy, I'll start them on more of a protein sparing fast. So it's
what's that about?
It's about mostly just protein, and your listeners can pull it up. I think the Cleveland Clinic, it's either the Cleveland Clinic or Johns Hopkins has a really nice kind of protocol for how that goes. It needs to be monitored by a physician, and it's actually a relatively lower fat diet and a low carbohydrate diet. It's
fucking low everything.
It is. It's low calorie, and it's almost all protein.
You fatty.
It's almost all protein, and you monitor them.
And then this is probably pretty short term.
Yeah.
Is it how long?
So I usually put them, if they're in that
2 or 3 years.
If they're
quick 2 or 3 years.
If they're in that rough a shape, I usually after the first month we can start changing things around, and then you put them on time restricted feeding because that's been shown to help.
Somebody will probably lose a tremendous amount of weight just eating protein, right?
Yep.
What kind of results have you seen off of that?
I mean, it depends on if they're trained or untrained,
Mm-hmm.
but like I'd mentioned before, I had a woman that had come in, had tried everything, and within 6 months, she'd lost 50 pounds.
Yeah.
She'd been trying for 10 years.
Right.
So it just depends. I mean, patients can lose easily, a couple pounds a week, depending on if they're heavier. And of course, they have to maintain their muscle mass.
Right.
So it's not about total weight loss, it's about the quality of the weight loss. And everyone just looks at the scale, but really, whether you have a DEXA,
Right.
but you need
One
to
of our
track
guys
that.
broke our DEXA scan, by the way. um, when it comes to the protein sources, I know you mentioned kind of like leaner, leaner things because you're not eating that much fat either.
Yeah.
But have you noticed a big difference to people being able to stay on the diet a little bit better, and also not having cravings from maybe perhaps them being able to eat red meat?
So they do eat red meat or they don't. All my patients eat red meat for the most part if
Right.
they're open to it.
Right.
And actually, I typically like grass fed and grass finished, but that tends to not be as lean. So sometimes I don't have to make them have organic as long as it's relatively lean.
Right.
And yeah, we know that high protein diets help with satiation, and it is you can be on it for a lifetime,
Right.
and that
Yeah.
becomes
People say it's not sustainable.
of course it is.
Right.
I've been on a high protein diet, an optimal protein diet for years.
Right.
And it allows for a behavior to kick in and
Right.
and you keep it.
Something that I noticed when I was on like the carnivore diet and even just on a keto diet, it almost felt like the more red meat that I ate, the easier it was to stay on the diet because there was never a time where I didn't look forward to eating red meat.
Right.
I was like, I get to have a steak. It wasn't like I have to eat a steak, like, oh no, I got another steak. Now, I noticed that, some of the stuff I'm doing now and some of the bodybuilding stuff where started pairing carbohydrates with protein. Now I'm like, oh man, it's kind of hard to get through the steak.
Right.
When it was just a steak, when it was just me and the steak, everything was perfect.
How
I
long
could
did you
just
do the carnivore diet for?
plow right through it. Probably for, I would say I nailed it down pretty good for probably about a 2-week span, but I did it for about 2 months.
How did you feel?
But I was also messing with some eggs and some different things, and then I got to a period where I was like, let me see what happens when I just eat just the meat, and I cut out some of the vegetables. That felt great. I felt great. I liked it a lot. What's some of your opinions on it?
That's what I do right now.
Yeah.
I am very low carbohydrate. Maybe I'll have some
Now,
greens.
what's the deal with vegetables? Everyone has a heart attack about vegetables.
I know. And I've been thinking a lot about this. And if you think about evolution and where we live, depending on the location, there were periods of time where vegetables were not available.
Right.
In winter, if you were in winter in Montana, you probably only had buffalo to eat. I think that there is something, and again, this is not evidence-based, but in my mind, it would make sense that the way in which we feed should be cyclical.
Right.
Animals eat cyclically, and I think humans likely should too.
Right. There's a lot of people have talked about that before, where you go on a ketogenic diet for a while, and then you spin out of that, and you eat some fruits, you have some berries and some different things like that, and some maybe like nuts and whatever foods that you like really that have some carbohydrates in them, and then you kind of get back into it. You kind of switch it up a little bit.
And I found the more carbohydrates you eat, for the most part, if you're not very tuned in, the more you'll crave.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It does kind of build upon itself. Right.
It does. And carbohydrates aren't inherently bad. It's not that they're inherent bad.
So that's what I like about the keto diet that I feel that people aren't talking about enough is I feel that the ketogenic diet promotes itself. Like when you're doing it and the longer that you're doing it, it seems to fuel itself in a way. Like it keeps you fired up to kind of be on it. You're not like just, and I suppose other diets can work that way, but it hasn't been my experience that I've really felt that before. But in a ketogenic diet, maybe because the ketones working with your brain or whatever the hell's going on, it feels like it works synergistically to keep you on the diet itself.
What have you found out of all the nutrition plans that you've tried? What has really been the best for you?
I think in terms of like, keeping lean muscle mass and having strength and being able to support, the type of workouts that I do, I think that having some carbohydrates in the diet is, for me anyway, it seems like it's essential. I don't know how many carbohydrates though. I haven't really years ago, I did a ketogenic style diet, and I started putting in some carbohydrates on training days, and I'd go like 100, maybe almost like 150 grams of carbs on some days, depending on the training day, and had really great results with that. More recently, being on the bodybuilding diet, the carbohydrates were still not that high, so I think that maybe that's where some of the confusion is. I think that people might think that they need to really hammer down this enormous amount of carbohydrates, and they probably just don't need.
Right.
75 to 100 grams of carbs is really, for a bigger guy, is a drop in the bucket, really,
Yep.
It's not a lot. How about for yourself when you were competing and stuff? You did some figure competitions?
Yeah, I was low carbohydrate. I was probably between 90 to 130 grams of carbs a
And
day.
did you like post-workout shake type thing, or did you just ate like a potato or something?
I just ate.
Yeah.
I don't actually really like a ton of shakes. I like to eat
Right.
my food.
Right.
So when I was competing, I had 130 grams of protein, 130 grams of carbs, and 40 grams of fat.
What type of recommendations do you utilize with your clients in terms of what they do kind of around their workout and like during their workout, if health and like weight loss is the primary goal?
Depends on how hard they're training. Typically, carbohydrate consumption pre and post workout is great,
Right.
but there is something to be said for training low, so training relatively depleted, but not necessarily for performance. And I don't have evidence to say that this is true, but this is what I found from my clinical experience of seeing hundreds of patients is
Right.
that you train them in a low fed state and their performance may not be great, but if they're mentally turned on, they're able to train hard
Right.
and they tend to lose more body fat.
Yeah, something I've noticed with adding in carbohydrates and being able to eat more is that I can work out harder, which that feels like a really good result. But I also, I have to admit, like I haven't kind of tinkered with everything. I haven't messed around with like ketones. I haven't really, I haven't like pricked my finger every day. Like I haven't like, really like dove into it hardcore. But I mean, about as hard as you can go, I guess, because I have done those things. I just haven't done it religiously to kind of figure out the exact recipe that might feel the best. But I have noticed, with more carbs, being able to go harder in the training sessions, and then kind of because of that, I'm able to grow. I'm able to get a little bit stronger. But you start to kind of ride that fine line of, you start to eat more carbs, you get more cravings.
Yep.
I'm a fat kid, and always will be. And the other side of that, too, is once you have an influx of carbohydrates, then you run the risk of gaining more body fat. Or even in some cases, like kind of interrupting your sleep.
Yes,
which
absolutely.
For me, I found personally that when I didn't have as much carbohydrates, it was easier to sleep.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So a lot of people eat a little bit of carbs before bed, and it
Right.
seems to really, from a clinical perspective, it seems to actually really help them sleep.
Yeah, no, I've heard that
So,
before, and that is the case with me. That my problem is I'll wake up though, so like I can, as soon as I hit the pillow, I could be out cold, like somebody just knocked my ass out. But yeah, I'll wake up kind of like boom, like it's like 2:00 in the morning, and I'm like wide awake. I'm like, why the hell is this
So
happening?
I'm wondering if you're eating the carbohydrate, you're having a blood sugar drop,
Yeah,
and then you're
perhaps.
having a cortisol spike, and you're waking up.
Yeah,
So I'm wondering if you're having reactive hypoglycemia.
probably
Just
probably
getting
something.
hungry all over again.
I mean that was a trend that happened for a long time where I'd just wake up in the middle of the night and like a bear I would just attack my pantry and eat everything that was in there, make
Twinkies.
some weird combinations of food in the middle of the
Twinkie and
night.
pancakes.
Yeah, it was almost like I was high,
Get
but I
super
wasn't.
creative in the middle of the night.
Yeah, you're like, oh, this ice cream looks good, and like this cereal looks good, and you just throw it all together.
Yeah. Do you monitor it, or not necessarily monitor, but like prescribe sleep for your clients? Like necessarily?
yeah.
Yeah.
So we know that for hormone production and even for the brain and prevention of Alzheimer's, that there is systems in the brain that require sleep, right? And of course for testosterone production.
With your practice being functional medicine, somebody comes to you and they have low testosterone levels. So obviously there's you can just give somebody testosterone, but I'm sure you have a lot of methods and techniques that could help raise their testosterone naturally. What are some things that you might do?
Definitely get them sleeping better, improve nutrient status. zinc and micronutrients, and believe it or not, GI health. I found that if people have a really dysfunctional GI system, that they don't absorb their nutrients.
Wow.
Of course, there's no direct correlation between GI health and testosterone production. But when I see my patients and our goal is overall health, and within that umbrella is optimizing testosterone, the more that I can get them absorbing their nutrients, their fats, their
Right.
all of those quality vitamins, then I see that there's a possibility that their testosterone can go up. And of course, resistance training, which is really good.
What's the difference between working with a male and a female? What are some things that you might have to try to address harder with a guy versus a girl, or vice versa? Is there any real differences?
I would say with the women, they have to really be aware of their nutrition. And of course, they have menstrual cycles and hormonal cycles. They have men have man periods, but it's not quite the same.
I'm going through a rough one right now. It's a heavy day.
Oh no.
It's not quite the same, but it's really.
Do you need a Snickers?
I need something, yeah.
So it's really having, making sure that their hormones are in check, and they're also being able to detoxify their estrogens and, their metabolites and things. So being really strict on their nutrition is key, and getting them to train hard. Really what their perception of training hard is,
Right.
and what really training hard. And it's not for all women. I'm not saying that there aren't I take care of some great female athletes. But when we're talking about the kind of population that is looking to lose weight and have struggled with weight for a very long time, then you really have to get them to switch their mindset and really execute. Their numbers, you can't just do Soul Cycle or Barry's Boot Camp and really see a body change composition.
Everybody needs to lift, huh?
I think so. We were designed to do that. Right?
Everybody needs to hit the gym and get jacked and get more muscle.
Jacked and tan. Everybody.
That's
It's true.
Yeah, for a long time, I used to kind of think like, oh, it'd be great if everyone had some form of exercise, But as I, gotten older, and as I've seen more and more people and seen more and more people gain the weight back, I've kind of been like, you know what? I guess everyone needs to lift.
They do, because the muscle is the largest organ in the body. Only two ways to stimulate it, through resistance training and nutrition.
Do you help people with their actual lifting protocol as well?
I'm glad you asked that. Actually, I refer that out because there are people that do that. So for my program, I have Kara Lazowskis. She does mine, and you'll see her on a show coming up soon.
Cool.
Don't want to give away the surprise, but it'll drop in January. And then, if they want to go online, there's Forge Training. Jim Brown does a great online program that, people can put in their information and get an excellent program. And then, of course, I have trainers in the area in New York City, and I've worked with Lane Norton before, and he's done, he's fantastic. So it's really about kind of outsourcing that part, and I always vet the people that I use, because that part, if that part's done wrong, it's the equivalent of having a nutrition plan that's done wrong.
Right.
So the training is just as important as the nutrition.
How long have you been lifting for?
Since I was 17.
Damn.
Yeah.
Have you kind of had to battle the kind of girl gaining muscle type thing most of your life, especially when you first started?
No, I'm lucky. So my dad, I was always pretty athletic. My dad was wrestling, captain of his wrestling team at Penn. So I came from just a very athletic family. The biggest struggle I've had is injuries. Multiple. God.
Getting hurt?
Jeez. So that's the biggest thing that has really set my training back, is just multiple injuries.
Just what, training too hard, or making bad decisions? What happened?
Embarrassing. With this most recent injury, it's been a 2-year rehab process. It's I was training for Kokora, which is a 50-hour event with Mark Devine, who's amazing. That's out of SEAL Fit. And I thought it was going to be a good idea from transitioning after my fellowship to decide to pick the hardest thing that I could do. And my training volume was extensive. I was going through Jim Jones. They were programming my training at that time, and I was being a little crazy. 80% avulsed my hamstring, tore my right shoulder, broke my left shoulder. But I'm on the mend. It's been 2 years.
My God. How'd you tear both hamstrings? In the same workout?
It was heavy lifting, and then sprint intervals and rucking with load, and just high volume that my body wasn't, Truth is, I came from a figure background. Even though I had done dance, gymnastics, and other sports, when you go into more of the physique kind of
Right.
exercises, it doesn't mean that you're a functional athlete. There are some great functional athletes that I'm sure bodybuild and do, figure, but I wasn't one of them.
Right.
I had show muscles, which
Right.
didn't necessarily translate to being able to withstand a heavy load and 10 sets of 10 pull-ups a day.
Yeah. How'd you get through that time period of being injured for so long and staying in shape?
I did whatever I could. I tried not to ever make excuses.
Yeah.
I've had 6 stem cell procedures,
Yeah.
5 PRPs.
Did you get depressed at all because you couldn't
Yeah,
exercise the way you wanted to?
So I thought a lot about this. And what I did was I really channeled, I always put a lot of effort and time into the physical prowess and physical excellence. What I did was I then shifted that intensity and put that towards my career and working on other projects. But it's been challenging. But I'm just at the tail end of coming out of that now. Now it's about being smart.
Yeah. Well, and then it helps you, have empathy for some of your clients that might have, maybe in the past you might be like, I don't care what happened to you, right?
Yep.
And now you get to be a little bit more reasonable with them, I guess. It sounds like in your practice you're able to utilize, a lot of different people. You're able to utilize blood work.
Yep.
Obviously, you have a long history of working with a lot of people as well. What are some things that you feel that are just very common in the people that you're working with that maybe the listeners could try something that would really work well for them? That's something that maybe they're not thinking about. I know we kind of mentioned some sleep. You and I talked a little bit about like toxins. Like, are there some things that maybe people microwave their food for too long, or like, I don't know, there could be some things that we're doing on a daily basis that are harming us a little bit more. Maybe we eat organic foods. I'm not really sure, but do you have any recommendations like that?
What was so surprising to me was the amount of digestion problems and the amount of fatigue people had and what they would do unknowingly to combat that fatigue, whether it's multiple cups of coffee or stimulants or anything. And then they would continue to be tired, but do things to try to get rid of that tiredness, that fatigue. So I think really being aware of the amount of coffee consumption. I had one patient, he's a SEAL now. He was training for BUD/S. He was taking in 10 cups of coffee a day.
Jeez.
Damn.
So you go through this whole intake. How are you feeling? Oh, hey doc, I'm really tired. And, do you drink? No, I don't really drink. I'm really pretty healthy. And then you get down to the caffeine. Well, how much caffeine? 10 cups a day as you drink coffee. So I think it's really monitoring, definitely sleep, number one. Also seeing how much stimulants that people are on. Right. And I think that people don't think about that. And that includes chocolate, coffee that afternoon.
Chocolate? Can't take away our chocolate.
Digestive health.
Did you say
huge.
Eat more chocolate? You said?
I did not. I did not say eat more chocolate.
Yeah, definitely don't eat chocolate.
Raw cacao nibs. Just taking those and you'll just throw up in your
Nice.
mouth and you'll never want to eat those again.
Those are crazy.
Gross. Just disgusting.
There's
Exactly.
Was it Jessica? Did you show me that video? That kid eating that chocolate, or I can't remember. Somebody showed me a video of this kid was eating like pure. He wanted to eat pure cocoa.
Disgusting.
And he took have you seen the video? Yeah. He took a spoonful of it. His mom kept telling him, she's like, you don't want to have that. He's probably like 5 or 6 years old, but he just sees it says chocolate on it, and he's excited.
Perfect.
And he's just wanting to take a spoonful of it. And it's funny because she's like, okay, go ahead. And I'm watching it as a parent, and I'm like, the kid could die from this because he could choke on it. Look at him. He's so mad. And she keeps telling him, no, you don't want to have it. You don't want to have it. She's going over and over. Because he knows that, oh, yeah, he just coughed it out his mouth like it's a dragon.
So he did have it.
Yeah.
It's funny.
He just shot it out of his nose, I think, pretty much. Look at his face.
That's terrible.
Oh, poor little guy.
Oh, brutal. That's a good way to dissuade people from ever eating that.
Oh, he's like, I made a bad decision. That'd be like taking a spoonful of cinnamon.
I think I might do that with my patients.
Yeah, you'd be like, here, try this.
Yeah, not a bad idea.
What about cheats? Is there any room to
You earn it.
To cheat?
You earn it. I definitely don't think it's a good idea. Unless you have a lot of flexibility within your body fat range or you're happy with, Otherwise, it's just a bad behavior.
Right.
It's not about when your mindset is, I'm depriving myself, I deserve a cheat meal. That's a failure mindset. But if you are executing the way you should be, you're lean.
What about maybe not a cheat, but maybe just like, what about something that's maybe just like off your normal, off of like your diet plan, but it's not really a bad food necessarily?
So there are no
You know what I
bad
mean?
foods.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but you go into like a gray area, like, okay, you know, you recommended a certain diet to me, and maybe there wasn't fruit on there, but I was like, you know what, fuck it, I had a good training session, I'm gonna eat an apple. You know
That's
what I mean?
fine,
Like,
right? A post-training apple, no
Right.
big deal.
right,
But I do think that it's really about setting a plan for yourself, creating discipline and executing that. And especially with my patients, my job is to get them better. I want them, I don't take people that are high performers and feeling fantastic and make them better performers. There's a million people that do that.
yeah,
I'm a physician. I take people who are not feeling well. They could be elite performers. They could be elite military operators, professional athletes, housewives, it doesn't matter, who perform well and need help to get to the next level and take that elite mindset and then make them even better. So with that in mind, it's really about how do we create something that is sustainable for a lifetime and also being accountable. If they're going to go off their nutrition plan, it should be very conscious. And you should know how many times you're doing it.
it's like a birthday or something. I mean,
Yeah.
I know you don't want to get in the habit of like celebrating, but at the same time, you know, people
Yeah.
need a little bit of a leash, right? They need a little bit of freedom.
And I think it depends on the person. So
Right.
if they are a person that needs that, then you leverage that personality trait. Me, I don't need that.
Right.
I'm not interested in that.
Just stay on the plan all the time.
I do.
No matter what.
I do. I mean, there's sometimes I may have a meltdown and have a protein bar or
Right.
something, but
What about things like eating out? Like, do you,
I don't. I think it's a bad idea.
yeah, because of the oils and
Yeah.
weird
And
shit
then
they throw in your
people
food?
think I'm crazy, and
Yeah.
that's okay. You don't have to be, you set the bar really high. You are at your top level of craziness, and then people can decide how the
What
wrongs
about in
of
terms
crazy.
of social, like just trying to be social? Like, I don't know, you go over, it's a family gathering. Like, do you eat the food or do
Yeah,
you bring your
because
own stuff? Or
maybe I'll bring it or I'll hang out,
right,
but I don't need to feel that I have to eat.
right. What if you go on like a date or something, or you go out with some girlfriends or something? Do you eat some of that food,
No,
or you just
no, not necessarily.
and they all just think you're weird?
Yeah, it's perfect.
They just think you're strange.
Yeah, or you order some kind of something that is
Right.
You go to a place where and have it done there.
It can be difficult. I mean, a lot of times you go out to eat and you're like, I thought I ate something pretty healthy, but my stomach is killing me.
Right, and we know that
like,
as you go out to eat, the average it's 3 times the amount of calories. We know this,
right,
because it tastes good,
Right.
right? So my grandmother used to say, if it tastes good, spit it out. It's probably bad for you. But if you go out to eat, it doesn't it doesn't taste as if you cooked it at home, or in my case, cooked it in my hotel room with a
Right.
hot plate.
right. Yeah, it's amazing when you go out to eat some of these restaurants, like something like a Black Bear Diner or a Denny's or something like that. You eat there at like 8 o'clock in the morning, and then you're not hungry until like 3, and you're wondering why, but it's probably all the oil and all the
Right.
crap they throw in the. Who knows what's in there?
Right.
You know.
Yeah, I thought I was doing good by ordering broccoli at Spaghetti Factory, and they gave it to me, and I was like, dude, this is amazing. Like, I'm going to do this every time.
Right.
And then I looked down, there's just like oil all over the place. And so I was like, hey, what do you guys do to prepare the broccoli? Like, oh, we put brown butter all over it. I'm like, oh, okay. It's like,
I'll be coming back tomorrow.
yeah, exactly. Like, that's how I can make that shit at home.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's. I think that's the one of the toughest things that face people is like, how do we have some strategies? There's all these companies are
Yeah.
spending so much money on making these foods like hyper palatable.
Yeah.
And then there's just fast food everywhere. There's
Mhm.
fried food everywhere. A lot of times you order something, you might order like tuna or something, and it comes and it's fried, and you're like, shit,
Yep.
didn't want that. It just the chips are stacked against us in a lot of ways.
Absolutely.
And the only way to really protect yourself is to cook at home.
And I think that brings up a good point. It's the idea of shifting the paradigm. So we are so indoctrinated in thinking it's okay. There's food. I went to, I think it was Staples. And
Right.
at Staples checkout line, I swear to God, it could have been lunch buffet.
Mm.
I have Cheetos if I wanted, or something else in a brightly colored package.
I'm writing this down. Staples.
Yeah.
It was amazing. And if you are not, we know that if you visually see food, it begins this neurochemical process, right? So if you're watching the Food Channel, you will
Yeah.
begin to get hungry.
Mhm.
We need to make glasses that make you not see the food.
Have you seen the glasses that block out screens?
No,
You put them on and every screen just turns black.
that's awesome.
It's sick, yeah.
Hmm.
It's just a like a lens filter that like I put on my lenses or something, but like they just like altered it to that way. Anything with like a backlit display just totally disappears.
Yeah, there's so many people walking around, having unhealthy practices and walking around a lot heavier than maybe they should be. I guess there's the argument of like, I don't know, maybe some people don't care that much.
I don't think it's that.
I don't really, I never think that that's true though either, because I can't, I can't really think of anybody that doesn't want to be better.
Right.
Like I believe in people a lot more than that, and I think that people do want to make more money. People do want to look better. They want to. I know that people want to feel better.
Yeah.
And maybe if somebody doesn't want to feel better, maybe they, maybe they don't necessarily know what it's like to feel better, but they definitely don't want to be in pain.
Right.
Once somebody's in pain, then that's when they start to make some changes.
Yeah.
Have you been able to help people a lot with that? Because I know like inflammation plays
yeah.
into it a lot of, just eating these crap foods.
Absolutely. But patients that come in with pain, you clean up their diet, you get rid of some of these oils that are inflammatory, and their pain definitely decreases. There's other things that you can do. There's a medication called low-dose naltrexone, which helps upregulate the body's own ability to heal itself. You look for nutrient deficiencies. There's all ways in which people can feel better.
What are some strategies to help people with hunger?
Stimulants, it's true,
Yeah.
but also water. And making sure that your macronutrient balance
People don't really drink water.
Correct.
Right? I mean, they really
Yeah.
don't. They're drinking coffee or like a Crystal Light
Yep.
or something, this and that, but they're not really drinking water, right?
Yep. And also getting your macronutrient ratio correct. High protein for your first meal of the day, whenever that is wonderful for hunger, for satiation. People talk a lot about fat being satiating, but actually protein
Right.
has been shown to be really satiating. The Heather Leidy has done studies, shows breakfast skipping, looks at fMRI, shows what parts of the brain light up
Right.
in terms of cravings and
That happens to me quite a
satiety.
bit. Like I'm eating eggs and I just can't eat them anymore.
Yeah.
I'm like, shit, man. I
Yeah.
can't take one more bite of this.
So and also having hunger is not a bad thing, right? People think you shouldn't be hungry and that it's an emergency. Oh my gosh, I'm hungry, I have to eat.
Right.
So I think that changing the mind frame, hunger is not an emergency. In fact, good, be hungry. You deserve it for a little bit. It's okay.
And that's where like something like intermittent fasting comes into play. And I think everyone should at least try it,
Yeah.
whether you agree with the research or you're on the fence or whatever. I think everyone should at least play around with it. I'm not really a person, me personally, I'm not a big fan of somebody trying to fast every day for extended periods of time, especially if you're new to it. Like you might want to just try it out here and there. But
Yeah.
I liked doing it when I was doing it. I did about every other day.
How long did you fast for?
I felt really good. Had some really good results. Some days it wasn't very long. Some days it was only like 10 or 12 hours, which is like, really easy because you sleep for 7, 8 hours, right? And then other days I'd extend it a little bit longer and I'd try like 16 and 18, some of the recommendations from like Dominic D'Agostino
Yeah.
and stuff. And I liked it. The problem that I found was it didn't seem like I was able to like hammer enough food
Mm-hmm.
to fuel what I was doing.
Right.
So it's like I needed a little bit bigger window. And then also when you fast that long and you go dive right back into eating, when you're not really used to it, when you want to just like eat everything,
Right.
and then you kind of eat too fast, and that's not great for you either. So I was trying to find a happy medium between everything, and it seemed like if I just did 12 to 14 hours, it made the eating window longer. And it made reintroducing that food a little easier. And I did a 24-hour fast and a 48-hour fast, and all that stuff felt fine. I was, nothing. I was
You're
still
okay.
alive,
Still there.
still alive.
Still here.
But yeah, I didn't love the effects of it. But I think everyone should try it so that they can really learn
Absolutely.
about what true hunger is.
Yeah.
Because you'll get hit by like a wave of hunger. And then 2 hours later,
You're
it's
good.
gone, and then it comes back,
Yep.
and you're like, okay, now I'm starting to actually get
Yep.
really hungry.
I utilize intermittent fasting as a strategy for my patients all the time, especially if they've
Right.
yo-yo dieted and tried everything to lose weight. There is something called leptin resistance, and one of the strategies for dealing with leptin resistance is fasting.
Right. I think
So,
that fasting is great, and I think it works really well with a keto diet. I'm sure you can utilize fasting on any diet, but for me personally, I used it on a ketogenic style diet, and the keto diet in combination with intermittent fasting helped me a lot with hunger and it helped me a lot with cravings. And so I think that that's where those diets, and you know, uh, I'm definitely guilty of misrepresenting the word keto, as I think everybody else is too, most of the time, um, because I don't normally follow a true ketogenic diet. Although I have before, but I'm not a fan of low protein.
no.
I think that's, I don't
Some
think that's
people do really well on it,
yeah.
shockingly.
I never felt for me that it was a great idea. I don't mind doing stuff for periods of time. I think that it kind of makes sense. I think that your body was probably faced with a lot of these scenarios
Yeah.
just throughout the years that we've been on this planet. Your body's probably dealt with every form of hunger you can think of. And so I think that sometimes not having the protein in there, you could maybe make the argument that when you reintroduce it, maybe it would have, more of an impact. I don't know. But the interesting thing that I think is that you get all these experts together a lot of times, and
Yeah.
they really don't, they know, but they really don't know.
Yeah.
A lot of times all that you hear people recite is research. And in hearing a bunch of different people be on Joe Rogan recently, you heard the debates go back and forth, and this guy would whip out this research paper, and this guy would whip out this one, and then this one was more credible than this one because it was done this way.
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh my God, this is really it gets to be kind of overwhelming.
Yeah.
All the information
And that's
coming out
where
all the time.
practical experience is priceless. I think being able to experiment on yourself, being a physician that sees many patients,
I've been experimenting with myself since 13, maybe 12.
that you can help. You get with a good physician or you get with a good coach, and they've heard the story so many times that there are patterns that happen.
Right.
I typically can know how someone's going to do on a certain kind of nutrition plan. You get a sense of where they're at.
Right. You can kind of
Yeah.
tell
Yeah.
because you just worked with so many people.
Yeah. You
Right.
definitely get a sense of what their preferences are, where they came from, when they felt the best. But it is interesting. You get a bunch of experts in the room and everyone has a different opinion, even though all the science they're all facts.
Right.
So that's interesting.
The stuff about fiber, I kind of find that that's the most interesting part, because you'll have some people say that, we're supposed to have some foods that are going to ferment in our stomach. You can make the argument of that human beings are made to eat meat, but we're not 100% carnivore. I mean, it seems obvious to me that an apple and an orange and some of these things that are super bright and come off
Yeah.
these trees, that it seems like thousands of years ago when you would discover a thing of berries, it makes sense that you would eat them just
Yeah.
because they look so damn good, right? And people kind of argue back and forth, but what really interests me is the fiber side of things with the carnivore diet taking off and people getting so excited about that. I kind of hear these doctors say, oh yeah, you got to have fiber. But then when you really dig and you really ask them why you need fiber, it seems like they don't really know for sure on whether you need it or not.
I would say that is probably true because the body is very flexible. I haven't looked at any of the fiber studies recently, but from thinking about it, there's large populations, say the Eskimos, or there's multiple populations that have lived on just either meat and fat and done well.
Right.
Again, I think that the body is incredibly adaptable.
What about some people kind of making the comment of, like, if you're going to eat meat, that you should have vegetables with it in order to maybe fight off. Some people will say that meat is a carcinogenic, maybe the way that you prepared it or
Okay.
or
So
whatever.
don't burn
right?
it.
What's that?
So don't burn it.
Don't burn it. What if, like, can vegetables help detoxify your body in a certain way because they pull fiber from your body? What do you kind of think about some of that?
I think when I think about the word detoxify, I'd have to really think about what we mean
Right.
because we know that protein is necessary for glutathione production in the liver,
Right.
and that is what we use for detoxifying. So a higher protein diet naturally would be, if we use that definition, detoxifying. In terms of greens, fiber is great for elimination, right? And also has nutrients in it that they're not going to get in the meats. So
Right.
do I think that we need it? I think, I don't know that answer.
Yeah. It just seems very debatable, right?
I think I don't know. Yeah.
And I think that we just need more researchers and more scientists kind of saying that.
And I think that it ends up being personalized. So I have a really good friend. She's an orthopedic surgeon, and she's a type 1 diabetic. She is a vegan keto.
I think I saw you make a YouTube video with her.
Yes. Yeah.
there you
Carrie Dwells. She was at Cleveland Clinic. She's now in Cleveland. She has her own practice. She's amazing. We have totally separate views on nutrition. But what's amazing is she's been able to maintain her muscle mass as a vegan keto. What we believe has happened is that there's some emerging science that says that the gut bacteria actually break down and provide those amino acids. Actually, Dr. Donna Lehman is one of the people who trained me. He's one of the people that is part of this study, and that's amazing. So how is it that she's eating almost no protein? I would wither away to nothing.
Right.
I'd be starving, and I'd probably gain 1,000,000 pounds. But she is able to function as a vegan keto.
Right. There's some people that compete in bodybuilding that are vegan.
Is that true?
Yeah, there's a guy that has won like classic physique.
Okay.
I mean, he's really high level. He's super shredded. I cannot remember his name off the top of my head, but you don't want to ever just take like one person, right? But the guy has a huge following, and there's other people that kind of follow along with some of his stuff, and some of those people are pretty jacked too. It's
amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. I think we had George Lockhart on the podcast a long time ago, and George Lockhart is interesting because, sorry, George is like almost a little punch drunk. He used to be a fighter. He's just like he just has this kind of real world gritty information.
Mm-hmm.
And when you ask him about certain things, he's like, you know what? I think when the body wants to, it just does what it needs to do. It's like, oh my God, it's so simple. But, some people that have a practice, or some people that are maybe trying to monetize what they do.
Yeah.
Maybe they would say, hey, well, it's way more complicated than that. But maybe it's not more complicated than that.
I agree. I think we make things way more complicated. I think everyone wants to go into the weeds and into the deep science when it's important to have a foundation of knowledge on some of that stuff. But when it comes to practical application,
right,
it's not so super complicated.
Like within 15 minutes of your workout being over, you have to have carbohydrates right away. It has to be a cyclic dextrin, and you need 30 grams of branched chain amino acids. Like your body's probably not sitting there going, hey, bro, like where's the carbs? Where's the BCAAs?
Right.
We're waiting. Right? I mean,
I would agree with that.
And there's research that shows that it could possibly help, but I'm sure that you could. But a lot of times people are forming these studies to show that it helps. What if you formed a study that shows that it doesn't do anything? You'd probably get the same result.
I still want to believe, though.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah. You want to throw down as many supplements as you
exactly.
can. Right?
So at the end of the day, it ends up being what works for you, and also identifying in order of priority what you need. Mm-hmm. So for me, I'd love to start with digestive health with patients,
Mm-hmm.
especially if they're high level athletes. Then typically they have a pretty messed up GI system because of elevated cortisol. Again, this is just from my experience. They've really had impaired gut integrity.
Cortisol and stubborn belly fat.
Yeah.
That's always the commercial we see.
Yeah.
It's just, you think in terms of stress. Stress really affects the GI system. So It doesn't even have to be high level athletics or deployments or things like that. But really, high levels of stress seem to really affect the GI system.
Your stomach, it can really affect everything, right? Your immune system.
Oh, yeah.
and some people are saying now even like your central nervous system.
Yeah.
Shit.
So I mean, if all this is like screwed up because you're not digesting your foods very well,
Yeah.
you're in a lot of trouble, right?
Yeah. Of course, elimination. I see a ton of people with parasites. I send them to an old school parasitologist.
That's gross.
Oh, when you go see him, you have to get a rectal swab.
Damn.
I know.
I think I got something going on with my stomach.
Rectal swab.
It's,
I'm sure you'll find something.
those send away stool tests, you need a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm joking, but if Mark and I eat the same
Right.
piece of steak, his body's going to be able to digest and utilize way more of the protein than my body will. I'm assuming, because I've been skinny my whole life, and the second I eat something, it's like, okay, where's the next bathroom? Because it's going to be an emergency.
That's not normal.
Right. Obviously, yeah. So what can someone like me do to kind of get the ball rolling on keeping their digestive system on point?
You got to figure out what the problem is. First step in my practice is I usually send them to the parasitologist.
Mm-hmm.
That's in
I
New
think he
York
has
City.
overproduction of estrogen. If I was just by looking at him, that would be my guess.
You wouldn't
I
be
mean,
too
of
far
course,
off.
you can take things to slow that motility down, but
Like
I
probiotics or something?
yeah, Saccharomyces boulardii. But would you want to do that if you don't know what it is? No.
It's actually in my Amazon cart right now, that exact probiotic.
There you go.
That's crazy.
So good job.
So so if you are having stomach issues, where do you start? Like, what's the first test that you might go and try to get?
I mean, the first test that I do, like I said, the first thing that I do is I send them to a parasitologist. I mean, listen, this is where the art of medicine comes in. You do an exam, you look at their tongue. If you look at your tongue and it is a complete wreck, right? There's something going on. Either I send them to a parasitologist, I do a SIBO testing, you do a couple digestive tests.
Parasite is crazy.
Yeah.
A lot of them come back negative, but typically if someone has been having issues for a long period of time, they almost always have a parasite. That's at least what I found.
My stomach's going to be like a New York rat, just all kinds of shit floating around.
Like, how long are these parasites with us for? I mean, they're just
Can be there for a long period of time. People get it from eating a lot of sushi.
yeah.
You get it from going out of the country, whether it's Africa.
Does everybody have parasites, and then
No.
some people are able to eliminate them, and some people aren't?
Possibly. But if you are symptomatic and you are having GI issues,
Right.
then chances are, it doesn't mean it's a parasite, but just from my clinical experience,
Yeah.
the body can really regulate a lot of things, but it tends to have a really hard time getting rid of pathogens like that.
Just so terrifying.
Yeah.
No, it's treatable.
I think there's like a living thing in there just chomping on your
Well,
food.
it doesn't want to kill you. It wants to just feed off you.
Yeah.
No, mine's just grabbing all the food and throwing it out the back. We don't need this.
I mean, of course, you can see,
Shouldn't it help make you leaner because it's eating some of your food?
you might have food,
fairly
you
lean.
might have issues with gluten or certain kinds of sugars, those kinds of things, like the FODMAP diet thing of that nature. But
Yeah. Do you think some of those things work? Because
Sure.
those things are kind of controversial a little bit too.
no, I think it works.
It helps.
Yeah, I think that, of course, and there's no harm in trying. So
Right.
when you think about, well, is it BS or not? Well, give it a try.
Right.
That be your N of 1, be your own study.
That makes a lot of sense in terms of like gluten. Like gluten, whether you think it's going to hurt you or not hurt you, it probably is not going to help you.
Yeah.
So maybe just try to avoid it and see what happens.
See what happens. Exactly.
It doesn't really cost you anything to give it a shot, right?
Exactly. And most of my patients don't eat gluten, and it's not because I'm inherently against it. I find that it's packaged and people can't control calories.
Right.
And again, I personally come from a camp of a lower carbohydrate.
Yeah. Well, I think that's where the low carb
Perspective.
stuff is effective, is that it does help you manage your calories easier because carbohydrates just aren't on the menu.
Yeah.
They're not on your menu. They're not on your radar. Like,
Right.
let's take a more regular person, not a mutant like yourself who doesn't go out to eat ever. And
I go out to eat doesn't mean I eat.
it doesn't
when
mean you
I'm
actually
out.
eat
Yeah,
anything.
just-
You just sit there and sip on
Just
some
like today, your wife asked me if I wanted a
Yeah.
poke bowl.
Oh yeah, just sipping on iced tea while you're out
And
with
I
your
said,
friends.
I said, no, I have my pound of beef in my bag. I'm good.
There you go.
Poke's so good, though.
It is good. Well, she doesn't eat raw fish,
I don't
right?
eat- I don't
That's
eat raw
right.
fish. No,
What about regular fish?
no,
No, you don't like fish.
tastes gross.
Not a fish person.
Salmon, once in a while, canned sardines if I'm really
Canned
struggling.
sardines?
If I'm struggling and everyone is in the plane and they're eating
That's a
their
real
pretzels.
jump for someone who doesn't
Yeah.
normally eat fish.
I couldn't do it.
You do what you have to, right?
Yeah.
I stick to the plan. I stick to my plan.
What's your favorite food?
Probably beef.
What's your favorite food before you started this entire mess?
Trail mix, maybe.
Trail mix.
I don't know. I'm
That's
not
just-
really a big foodie person.
Oh man,
I'm
That's
not.
no
It's just
fun.
I never was raised that way. It was not really on my radar.
you said your stepmom, was that right? Was
My godmother, yeah.
Godmother.
So her name is Liz Lipsky. She is one of the trailblazers of functional medicine. She was a PhD in nutrition. She wrote the book Digestive Wellness, teaches all over. So I moved in with her when I was 17.
that's when you started learning all this stuff.
Yeah,
And then now this is what you do for a profession, and you travel all over the place.
I do, yeah.
You do like seminars and stuff as well,
I
right?
do. I do. I
And,
teach and, we
yep.
talk. It's really an open conversation. Again, it's utilizing the base as a physician, so nutritional sciences and medicine, and you combine it. And really, again, my focus is on muscle and protein because everyone focuses on diabetes, obesity, and they always focus on the problem. But the solution is so evident. And the solution is really just keeping your muscle healthy and really understanding as you age what that means and not eating like you did when you were 20. Even if you were a fit 20-year-old bodybuilder or a fit 20-year-old athlete eating 150 grams of protein as you age, that needs to change. Actually is higher.
You said you worked with people that were 65 and up.
I did.
Can those
I do.
people gain muscle?
It's very hard. But yes, you can always improve. I don't recommend fasting for those people.
Right.
So once you destroy tissue at a certain age, then it becomes much harder for things to recover.
A lot of times older people just aren't as interested in eating too, right? I mean, have you
Yeah.
found some of that? Yeah. They just, for whatever the hell reason, and they wake up a lot earlier and stuff, right?
I don't know what is up with that. Yeah.
And they sleep all day long. Well, not all day long, but they'll fall asleep in the middle of the day. Only because my dad does that all the time.
So it's really interesting. It becomes important to age mindfully because we're all gonna. Apparently, nobody gets out alive, from what I hear.
Yeah.
And
There could be a couple people. I mean, you never know.
yes, I would. Be interested.
I mean,
in
I
one
could
of
be
those.
like 400 years old. You know?
You could be.
You
That is
know?
amazing Botox you have.
be,
Whatever your secrets
Could
are.
be a vampire.
It's
I
just,
need to know.
It's just all that protein.
Yeah. It is really
Just
about.
a facelift. Wasn't bad.
So, for example, my dad lives in Ecuador. He is a mountain man. He decided he didn't want to be a mathematician or stockbroker anymore. He wanted to be an expat and move to Ecuador and be a mountain man. He's like a medicine man. He does ayahuasca and all this crazy stuff.
Tight.
So what does he do? He says he is 65 and a 27-year-old. He is in a 65-year-old, but he's really 27. So what does he do? He walks. If it's 3 hours or less, he'll walk there.
Wow.
He eats 180 grams of protein a day. 2 days a week, he does resistance exercise. He does some extracurricular things I don't even want to know about. And his concept of aging is not, I'm old and frail. It is, I'm super vibrant and full of life. And the reason I bring that up is because aging consciously really can change the trajectory of your life. I mean, he has more energy. When I go to visit him, I say, Dad, I need to take a nap.
Yeah.
See you later. Get the frick out of here,
Yeah, I feel a lot better than I do, than I did when I was like 20, especially with training.
Yeah,
With training, I feel like I can handle way more.
right.
It's just, I think that people kind of have a mindset of like, as they get older, they're going to get weaker.
Exactly.
Or all their joints are going to
Yep.
hurt all the time.
And then they buy into it. And
yeah.
then they're surrounded by, it's contagious.
Yeah,
Because you are a product of your environment. Look at the obesity epidemic.
right,
And you also you rise to the challenge of those around you.
right.
So,
And a lot of athletes, strength athletes, bodybuilders, a lot of times they get better into their late 40s and even early 50s. So, I mean, you got guys like Dexter Jackson who are stepping on the bodybuilding stage at, 50 plus. Obviously, these guys are chemically enhanced, so it's they have a little bit different story than some other people, but it's definitely possible to get stronger as you age. Have you noticed there's as you've been doing this for so long, have you noticed there's been more women involved in what you're doing?
in terms of practicing.
In terms of like just professionals that are kind of in this, because I see a lot of men. I see
Yeah.
there's like a lot of guys. We have tons of guys on this podcast, but I've noticed that there's been like a little bit of a surgence of women getting into the field.
Yeah. I think that I don't know what it was like before in terms of female physicians or females that do this kind of work.
Right.
trying to think of, I definitely have a great crew of girlfriends that they're all professionals, whether they're
Right.
physical therapists or, my business partner. But
You have women colleagues that are in like fitness and that kind of thing, or not really?
I do. So my
Yeah.
business partner, Teresa Di Pasquale, she has a bikini competitive company. She's a pro bikini competitor. We're actually building something, an online platform
Oh,
that
awesome.
talks a lot about the stuff that we
Any
are.
relation to Mauro Di Pasquale?
No,
No.
not that
Okay.
I know. But so we're actually building something called Strong for a Century. And yeah. But in terms of women physicians, I'm not sure.
Hmm.
I'm not sure. But I'm sure there's some great ones out there.
With trying to get these people to adhere to the diet and these different things, when you go to like a family function or you get around some friends and they start asking you some questions, how hard is it to get some of your friends or relatives? You kind of
They're all my
engage.
patients.
Oh, they are.
Oh yeah,
Oh, there you go.
yeah,
That's great.
Mhm.
So you got to whip them into shape.
yeah. They're really on board. People inherently, like you said, want to feel good.
Right.
So that's not a challenge.
Does your dad kind of follow some of the
Yep.
diet recommendations and
does.
stuff like that?
He does.
That's cool. Yeah, both of my parents they've followed a lot of my diet information more recently, and it's helped improve their health a lot. My dad goes on walks with us every night. My mom's lost like 60 pounds. So,
Amazing.
yeah, it took them 30 years, but
It's fine. They're on board.
yeah, they're on board. They're on board now, so screw it.
Yeah. So I think that having people around you that believe in what you're doing and those kinds of things are
Right.
essential.
How long ago did you compete? You were competing in some figure contests and stuff like that?
I think the last time was maybe 2000 and, it was either 12 or 14.
You missed some of it, or was it too like regimented?
No. I was ready. I don't mind the regimen. I love training for something, but I'm ready for some more of an athletic event, which is how I got interested in Kokoro.
Right. What's that?
So that's a 50-hour event that Mark Devine puts on, and it's
What do you do?
a Navy SEAL fantasy camp for 50 hours. Right?
What the hell got you interested in that? Sounds terrible.
Yeah, it sounds like fun. Yeah. So something along the lines of that
Right.
challenge.
Sounds brutal.
That sounds fun, right? But we like challenges. There you go.
So when you were doing some of this training, did you implement a little bit more carbohydrates?
I did.
Probably also just because you might be away from, you might just be away from food, and it might be more convenient to pack, some carbohydrates with you or something like that to grab onto something quick to snack on. I mean, if you're trying to train for something like this, I'm sure you're, gone, away from easy accessible foods, right?
Well, they feed you there, but the
Oh, okay.
training up to that, I packed all my food and
Right.
I was able to train.
Yeah, it looks terrible.
It was amazing. So actually,
Did you enjoy? I mean, you like training
no,
like that?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. The harder, the better. That's why I did school for about 17 years. So
Yeah, I know. I
don't
saw that
miss
on your
like-
sheet
yeah.
over here. I was like, why is she in school for so long?
So bad.
We're gonna train some bench press today. I'm gonna
Oh,
teach you
boy.
how to bench.
Amazing.
How much you bench?
I haven't been benching.
Oh
I've
my god.
been working on healing some of those injuries, so
Yeah.
this will be good. Thought we were doing Pilates. I packed my leotard.
Yeah. Well, yeah. We can get into doing
We-
some of that too.
It would be beneficial for my back for sure.
I think I would get hurt.
Hmm.
I think I would definitely get hurt doing that. What do you have coming up? You're going down to San Diego, right?
Yep, going down to San Diego, and then next weekend I'm going down to First Form. We're going to be launching a foundation series for
Oh, cool.
GI health.
Oh, that's awesome.
I'm really excited about that. And then traveling every other weekend.
Yeah. Going
So then-
all over the damn
Yeah.
place. Very cool. Anything else, Andrew?
We just barely touched on water earlier, just saying that we all need to be drinking water.
As much as you can drink.
Thank you. Okay. Now, what was I going to ask next? Oh, so for chicks,
Yeah.
losing body fat but still maintaining muscle, what are the first steps that they can
Lift
take?
heavy.
Gotcha.
They got to lift heavier.
And then more protein.
Yeah. And lifting heavy.
Cool.
Do you think trying to just challenge yourself in each workout and try to just get a little bit more weight on there, as safely as possible is kind of the objective,
I think that having a really well-designed program
Hmm.
is really important.
right?
And I think that if you do things haphazardly, you get haphazard results.
yeah, you got to kind of track everything and kind of understand like what's coming next and what you did in the past and all that kind of
The
stuff.
most successful people that I've seen in training and life and health, that's what they've done. So that's
Right.
why I always tend to refer them out to people that's what they do,
Right.
right? And then you have something implemented, you know exactly what's happening. It would be the equivalent to not looking at blood work. Say, oh, well,
Yeah.
I just think that this is, I think we should just do
Yeah,
this.
just take a bunch of zinc, you'll be
It's
fine.
fine.
Mhm.
But I would say, well, hey, I'd like to actually see.
Right.
So,
That makes sense. And then you mentioned Charles Poliquin being
Yeah.
a mentor for a long time. What are some things that you learned from him over the years?
To read.
I'm sure it's a lot.
one of the biggest things is that he always said you need to keep reading.
Yeah.
Hours. I mean, a minimum of 8
He,
hours a week.
Knew like what 4 or 5 different languages or something like that.
Yeah,
right?
very smart. I was really lucky to have been mentored by him for the time that
Yeah.
that I have, that I have been. So
Yeah, he was awesome. Yeah, one thing that I really liked about him was, how he was. He would really stick to his guns on stuff, and I
Mhm.
think more people need to do that. More people need to believe in what they're sharing, and he also too was like very trusting. He'd be like, "This guy over here,
yes,
has been doing this for years, and
Yeah.
if he knew somebody and he knew they were good, then he was just like, we're going all in on
Yep.
this, whether it was a amino acid recommendation
Yeah.
or whatever it was, and he would say, and then he would share the information with people, but not only would he share the information with people, but then he would say where he got it from,
Yeah.
which is not common enough. People are like, they want to take credit for it.
he's very generous. He's
And it
very
was-
generous of spirit, generous of his time,
Right.
generous of his resources and his energy.
Right.
He had a couple of us over 2 weeks ago, and he made mixed yak, beef, ostrich, venison stew. We just mixed all this meat together.
Yeah.
It was-
How about his basement with all that equipment?
I know.
I've never seen a gym like that before. It was insane.
Yeah.
He just had stacks and stacks of equipment everywhere. And, hopefully the family's able to, get everything together. And I know he just started the gym, so hopefully they're able to kind of carry on the legacy. But anyway, as I said earlier, we lost a great one. Awesome having you on the show today.
Thanks for
Can't
having
wait
me.
to get some training in. And where can people find you?
They can find me on Instagram. I'm very active on Instagram, Dr. Gabrielle Lyon. My website.
You're big on the selfies?
No, I'm actually terrible at Instagram, but I'm working on it. It's the place that I'm actually active in. But
Right.
people can find when I'm going to be speaking or at whatever event I'm going to be at. And then, of course, my website, which is not super active, but they can download my protocol. It's really great for women, the baseline protocol, which I'm sure your listeners are already doing. And men, too. You guys can take a look at it, and I'm happy to answer any questions. And then Facebook.
Lift heavy and eat more protein.
And they can come see me in my clinic at the Ash Center in New York City
Awesome.
if they want to.
Are you near Manhattan?
I'm in Manhattan, 61st
Oh.
and 5th Avenue.
Oh, you're in Manhattan. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's crazy there.
Where did you say you grew up?
I grew up in Chicago.
Chicago.
Yeah.
I love New York City.
You do?
I do.
It's a lot of
Well, it's great to
opportunity.
visit.
Yeah.
You live there, so
yeah, it
that's
is.
different.
Crazy town.
Yeah, I've only ever really visited because I did grow up in New York, but
You did?
I'm from upstate New York,
Okay.
Poughkeepsie.
I know where Poughkeepsie is. My sister got married in Poughkeepsie.
Oh my God, Poughkeepsie.
Who do you? Yeah, small
There's a
world.
reason why I left. But no, I love New York, and then New York City is just, it's always been fun because I only go there for like a short period
Right.
of time. I go in, I enjoy it. I don't get hit by all the negativity of it, and
Yeah.
I get out of there.
Smart man.
But man, the weather gets to be shitty. People get to be angry.
They're very angry. I got here and people are smiling on the way to the coffee place, saying hello. And you kind
People
of
got no worries. They got no worries, bro.
Like, am I being punked? Is somebody
Yeah.
call it? It's the weirdest
I
thing.
remember like going back to New York one time, and I went into a deli to like order something, and the guy like was about to like point to me, but he could see that I was like in the middle of like trying to figure out what to order, and he skipped right past me and he was like, next. And I was like, shit, I become one of those like people just passing through. I wasn't quick enough. So in New York City, things move quick.
They do.
And if you're not, and
It's
if you're in the
true.
way, you get passed up or run over.
Yeah, it's true.
Strength is never a weakness. Weakness is never a strength. Catch you guys later.